Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a really, quite a gripping story from 1920s England.
Yeah, the case of Edith Thompson and Frederick Bywaters.
Exactly. A forbidden love affair, murder. And it led to this double death sentence that just, well, it scandalized the whole country.
It really did. And the source material we're looking at today is particularly interesting.
How so?
Well, it takes the grim historical facts, Edith Thompson's execution, January 9th, 1923, but then it combines them with this incredibly detailed counterfactual story.
Counterfactual, like what might have happened.
Precisely. It imagines her life if she'd actually been reprieved at the last minute. So it's a real ethical thought experiment.
Okay, so our mission here is kind of twofold. We need to pull out the key facts about the real case, but also explore this imagined life that never was.
That's the plan. Analyze the history and the implications of what was lost.
Right. Let's start with the historical tragedy then. The people involved are pretty central.
Absolutely. First, there's Edith Jessie Graydon, born on Christmas Day, 1893. By all accounts, she was smart, quite lively.
And successful, right. She was a bookkeeper at a milliner's, Carlton and Pryor.
That's right, doing well for herself. She married Percy Thompson back in 1916.
Okay, so then comes the complication.
Frederick Bywaters, usually called Freddie. He was a mess steward on the SS Maria, and crucially, he was younger than Edith. Only 18, I think.
18 when their affair started around 1920. Wow.
Yeah, quite a bit younger. And it became this very intense, passionate affair. The sources even mentioned that during this time, Edith became pregnant by Freddie.
Oh, really?
Yes, but she tragically induced a miscarriage. Sort of highlights the level of intimacy and maybe desperation involved.
Definitely sets a volatile stage, which leads us to the night of the murder, October 3rd, 1922.
Right. Edith and Percy were walking home in Ilford late at night.
And Freddie just jumped out.
He ambushed them. He stabbed Percy with a sheath knife, hit the carotid artery. Edith apparently screamed, "Oh, don't!" Freddie ran off.
So Freddie's part in it. Pretty straightforward.
Legally, yes. They found him quickly. He had a blood-stained coat, and he told them where he'd thrown the knife. His guilt wasn't really the main issue.
It was Edith. Because she initially tried to cover it up, said Percy just collapsed.
She did, initially. But the real crux of the case against her, the thing that really swayed the jury, wasn't the stabbing itself. It was her letters.
Ah, yes, the letters to Freddie. Passionate, apparently.
Extremely passionate. And the prosecution used them relentlessly. They argued these letters proved she was this tawdry and reprehensible woman. That was the phrase used.
So what was in the letters that was so damning?
Well, Edith claimed they were just fantasies, dramatic outpourings written during this intense affair. They mentioned things like trying to poison Percy, using powders, ground glass, that sort of thing.
But she said it was just talk, fantasy.
That was her defense. But the prosecution managed to convince the jury it wasn't fantasy. They argued it showed she was actively encouraging Freddie, conspiring with him to commit murder.
So hang on. They essentially convicted her based on writings, based on the intent they read into these letters, not necessarily a direct physical act related to the stabbing itself.
That's the core of the controversy, yes. The letters turned it from a potential crime of passion by Freddie into a calculated conspiracy involving Edith, and the jury bought it.
Wow. So, verdict, guilty for both.
Guilty with no recommendation for mercy. That part's important.
No mercy asked for by the jury.
None. And despite all the appeals to the king, the prime minister, the home secretary, William Bridgeman, nothing worked.
Bridgeman? He was the key figure there, wasn't he? The home secretary had the final say on clemency.
Exactly. He held the sole power to grant a reprieve. And there was a massive public outcry. A petition with over 1 million signatures, apparently the largest ever at that time.
1 million signatures, and still refused.
Still refused. The political climate, the perceived immorality highlighted by the letters, it seems Bridgeman felt unable or unwilling to intervene.
So January 9th, 1923, execution day.
Yes. Freddie at Pentonville Prison, Edith at Holloway, executed simultaneously.
The source material talks about the impact this had, not just on the public, but on the people directly involved in the execution.
Profoundly. It's quite startling, actually. The hangman, John Ellis.
He carried out Edith's execution.
Yes. He retired not long after. And later, in 1931, he committed suicide. Reports suggest he became convinced Edith was innocent.
Good heavens.
And it wasn't just him. The prison chaplain at Holloway and Governor Morton. They both also retired early, and apparently spent years speaking out against capital punishment directly because of this case.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? The state carrying out the sentence, but the individuals involved being deeply, perhaps irreparably affected.
It really underscores the human cost, beyond just the person executed, the psychological toll on the executioners.
And the grim details continue even after her death. The burial.
Yes, the sources are quite specific. She was buried within the prison walls, as was standard, put in an elm coffin, and then covered in solidified lime.
Lime? Why lime?
It was thought to quicken decomposition and maybe act as a disinfectant, standard practice for prison burials like this.
Grim. And then decades later, her body was exhumed.
Right, in 1971. Holloway Prison was being redeveloped, so they had to exhume the remains of several executed women buried there. Edith, Ruth Ellis, 4 others, I think.
What do the sources say about that exhumation?
It was done very secretively, late at night. The official report, mentioned in the source, notes finding Edith's grave at 10:15 p.m. Her remains were waterlogged, still covered in this now solidified lime.
After almost 50 years.
Yes. And in an advanced state of decomposition, they had to dig down quite deep, 8 or 10 feet, through heavy clay. It just adds another layer of, well, finality and grimness to the whole thing.
So her remains were eventually moved.
Yes, first reinterred at Brookwood Cemetery, and then, much more recently, in 2018, finally reunited with her parents in the City of London Cemetery.
Okay, so that's the brutal reality. The lime, the execution, the long-term trauma for those involved. Now let's pivot to that other part of the source material, the what if.
The counterfactual. The life that never was.
How does the source imagine this reprieve happening? It must have been incredibly last minute.
Oh, intensely dramatic. The scenario paints Home Secretary Bridgman wrestling with his conscience right down to the wire. He makes the call to Holloway at 8:58 a.m.
2 minutes. 2 minutes before the scheduled 9:00 a.m. hanging.
Just 2 minutes. Edith is spared, and her imagined life begins right there.
And how does it begin? What's the first step after avoiding death?
It begins with new life, literally.
Yeah.
She's released, and it turns out she was pregnant by Freddie at the time of her arrest.
Pregnant again.
Yes. And this time, she gives birth to a daughter. She names her Grace.
Grace. As in by the grace of God.
Exactly. She sees this baby as a miracle, someone who defied non-existence. This child becomes her anchor, her reason to rebuild.
Does she return to any kind of normal life? Does she go back to her job?
Amazingly, yes. She goes back to Carlton and Pryor, the milliners. And here's a fascinating detail from the counterfactual.
What's that?
Her notoriety, her infamy.
Right.
It actually boosted business. The source suggests the company saw something like a 27% increase in sales over 4 months. People were fascinated, furtively perhaps, but it translated to the bottom line.
Wow. So scandal as a form of celebrity, even back then.
It seems so. A strange kind of public fascination that trumped moral judgment, at least in commercial terms.
What about Freddie in this imagined life? He wasn't reprieved in reality.
No, but in this scenario, he serves his time. He's released after just over 10 years, December 1931.
And do they get together?
They do. They marry. They even have a romantic honeymoon in Cornwall, where the source notes she first starts calling herself Mrs. Bywaters.
A second chance for them. Does it last?
Well, life continues to bring loss, even in this imagined timeline. Her father dies in 1941, and then during the war, Freddie goes back to sea.
Back to being a steward.
Yes, on the P&O line. His ship is torpedoed in the Atlantic in 1943.
Oh, no. So he dies.
He does. But the source gives him a quiet heroism. It says he died saving the lives of 2 friends.
So even in this counterfactual life, there's still tragedy. But what does she do with this second chance?
That's where it gets really interesting. Having faced execution herself, she becomes a dedicated activist.
Against capital punishment.
Exactly. She feels she has a profound responsibility because she was spared. So she campaigns against the death penalty for much of her life.
And the source mentions something else. A quieter form of giving back.
Yes, this lovely detail. She starts donating blood in 1925, and she keeps doing it for nearly 30 years.
30 years. Like a quiet, consistent act of atonement. Or just giving life back.
Something like that. A very personal, physical way of contributing, perhaps balancing the life she almost lost.
Does this activism make her a public figure again?
In certain circles, yes. It gives her a kind of hard-won moral authority. The source highlights one powerful moment in 1955.
What happened then?
She attends the vigil outside Holloway Prison for Ruth Ellis.
The last woman executed in the UK.
Correct. And Edith is quoted as saying something quite pointed, that the public doesn't really deserve a position on the matter of execution unless they, like her, has stared eternity in the face.
Powerful stuff. But does the old scandal ever truly fade away in this imagined life?
Not entirely. The stigma lingers. Later in life, she takes custody of her friend Grace's orphan twin children, Lois and Albert. She wins the legal battle to keep them. But the court imposes a condition: mandatory child psychology checkups for the twins until they turn 18.
Still seeing her as potentially harmful even decades later.
It seems so. The state's judgment persists. And then years later, her goddaughter Lois gets into some trouble with drugs in the 60s. And Edith apparently feels that old persecution flare up again, that sense of being forever tainted by the past.
So it's not a simple redemption story. It's complex, shadowed.
Very much so. But the counterfactual does grant her a peaceful end.
Oh, no.
She finds companionship again later in life with a French doctor, Paul Pastoreau. They actually get married when she's 84 in 1977.
84?
Wow. Yes. She moves to France with him, takes up painting. He eventually passes away peacefully. And Edith herself, in this imagined life, lives to be 94.
A long life.
A long, full, complicated life. And her hypothetical final wish, to have her ashes scattered at sea with Freddie's.
So the source paints this incredibly detailed picture. Activism, family, love, loss, art. A whole life lived.
A sprawling narrative, yes, full of redemption and continued challenges. But then comes the reality check.
Right, the gut punch. None of this actually happened.
None of it. This whole second act, the activism, Grace, the marriage to Paul, dying peacefully at 94, it's all fiction.
The reality was Holloway Prison, the Lyme execution at age 29.
Exactly. Those children, Grace, Lois, Albert, they never existed. The potential explored in the source material was extinguished on the gallows.
Which brings us to a really profound final thought, doesn't it? Something for you, the listener, to consider.
The source material hints at this ripple effect. In the fictional timeline, Edith's life leads generations later to a great-grandson becoming a naval captain, a local hero.
So, if you think about a life not just in terms of the individual's actions, but the future they might enable, the descendants, the positive changes they might inspire.
What potential was lost? What future contributions, big or small future captains, activists, maybe just loving mothers, were wiped out forever when that jury delivered the verdict? Guilty with no recommendation for mercy.
That irreversible cost. It's definitely something to mull over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.